So our good friend Nick Wagner from ESPN, friend of the program, our favorite cast member, broke the news on Monday night that the 49ers had fired special teams coordinator Brian Schneider. This is, I think, a move that had to be made. But for me, I think it has to be the first domino in the 49ers just kind of changing the way they approach special teams. Because they've done the thing of signing players directly just to play special teams. George Odom, Oren Burks, Nick McLeod was a really good special teamer who they signed this year. Zeke Turner, the linebacker from Arizona that they signed in the offseason who didn't even make the team. But they've tried to address the special team stuff directly because it hasn't really been great during the Kyle Shanahan era. It just was magnified this year because they struggled with so many other things. And there were just some really glaring special teams errors that directly led to losses. But I think they need to overall change their approach to that phase of the game, because I think ignoring it and just hoping that it doesn't lose them games is not the right way to go about it.
I wonder too if there's a trickle-down effect from the standpoint of like, all right, so Jordan Mason was basically like Jordan Mason made the team the last couple of years before this season primarily as a special teams guy, right? Like he got the nod over Ty Davis Price often on game days because he was a better special teams player, and Kyle Shanahan freely admitted that. Well, this offseason with Elijah Mitchell hurt and obviously Christian McCaffrey hurt, all of a sudden one of your core special teams guys in JP Mason ends up being the starter and getting all the reps at running back on offense. And it wasn't the only example of a backup who is typically a special teams guy having to get, a majority of playing time with the offense, even in training camp. And I wonder if the injuries, the lack of availability with some of the starters, forcing backups to more prominent roles on offense and defense, losing players like Charlie Warner in free agency. Again, not that it's like a monumental loss, but I do wonder if there was just an accumulation of factors that led to special teams personnel not being as good as you would like going into the season, right? On top of, your kicker just flat out isn't very good, right? Your kicker you drafted in the third round isn't very good. Your personnel isn't very good, and it didn't seem like the coaching was very good. And that is the triumvirate. That is the textbook on how to be bad on special teams. And I think you can make the argument that it goes back to what we've sort of talked about when we've previewed the offseason, is that, like, man, if you get everybody in there, you get all of your guys signed, and Brock Purdy is obviously not a special teams guy, but I think the point stands that, like, if you have all of your veterans playing or participating in the offseason program, you can actually have practice with your special teams guys who are actually going to be playing special teams during the regular season. And it just felt like there were all these different circumstances with individual players that led to, all these guys practicing on offense and defense. And in order to avoid just like running them into the ground, you're not going to have nearly as many special teams reps for these guys.
Yeah.
So, the roster wasn't very deep. The roster was not in a position to absorb injuries. And I think one area, aside obviously from the wins and loss columns, but one area that really hurt the team was special teams. And I think if you get all your ducks in a row and you're having your guys participating in the offseason program, you have another draft class with guys who will contribute. And you obviously hire a good special teams coach, I think you could be a lot better in that area. Now we'll see about the kicker situation. I would imagine Jake Moody's going to be gone. But I think it was, obviously a lot of it was under what was within the 49ers control, but I do think there was some elements of where it wasn't under control. And I think Kyle Shanahan doesn't do himself any favors when, he says publicly things that, like, he just doesn't want the special team to screw it up. I think if there's for him and definitely a way he can get better this in 2025, it's really caring about special teams, being really intentional with your offseason additions, and not just like being more present to the fact that, like, when you have injuries, your special teams are going to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Just see how that, see if you can improve in that aspect. I think that would be really important for them.
Yeah, just trying to kind of to expand on that, because I agree with what you said, but trying to win games with special teams.
Yeah.
Because it feels like right now they're just trying to play special teams to a draw. And if that's the game you're playing and the other team does anything to try and win in that phase, you're going to get beat. So your margin for error is so small, where you get got on a fake punt in one game. It's like, well, they're not going to get a team back because they're not going to fake punt. And they're not going to do something tricky on a field goal, or they're not going to do something fun on a kick return or on a punt return. They're just going to go out there and it's like, well, they got on that play. They're going to lose the special teams today. And I know it's one small part of the game, but when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, like those margins matter. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Bill Belichick is a really good coach who was obsessed with special teams. John Harbaugh has been a really successful head coach who came from special teams and understands the value of those units. So this isn't to say that because Kyle Shanahan has plenty of other stuff to figure out this offseason with the 49ers offense and with Brock Purdy and what they're doing there. But I do think you can devote a little time during the week, every week to that unit, whether it's in practice, whether it's in film, just trying to find ways to get edges. And I would love to see the 49ers try a fake punt one time. They've not done it. Kyle Shanahan has been their head coach since 2017, and they've not run a fake punt. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it.
Yeah, the thing for me too is like, you talk to any of these players, and we have over the years, like they will say, particularly the offensive guys, Kyle Shanahan, incredibly detail oriented when it comes to the way he coaches offense, right? Like the way receivers run routes, your steps have to be exactly right. You can't, you have to be able to hide what route you're running to your defender in the middle of your route. You can't project. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Like there's so many little details and nuances into blocking correctly on offense, running the right route as a receiver, the timing with the quarterback, the way the quarterback plays, and the way his forward. Like there's so many little details that Kyle Shanahan really harps on offensively, that it's amazing to me that he would be so detail oriented on offense that he wouldn't really care so much about special teams, because special teams is just all details, right? And
good point.
Winning and losing in the NFL so often comes down to a handful of plays and one score games. And it's like special teams, you're changing field position. You're prone to turning the ball over if you don't have a punt returner who can catch punts, right? You can massively swing a game if you give up a blocked punt. You can, if you allow a touchdown to Laviska Shenault, that can make it a lot more difficult to win that game.
Yep.
Like there's, it's all very minute, detail oriented stuff that makes you good on special teams. And he's so detail oriented on offense that it's confusing as to why he wouldn't treat special teams with the same attention to detail.
Yeah, or at least have an organizational philosophy. Because that's the thing is, I'm not expecting Kyle Shanahan to kick the door in on the special teams meeting and be like, this is what we got to do. But have the organizational philosophy of special teams guys are going to, and again, I don't know exactly how their practices and meetings are structured, but whatever it is currently isn't working. Yeah. So that's where it's on Kyle Shanahan. I'm not necessarily expecting Kyle Shanahan to start coaching special teams, but the key example of what you're talking about was that week 3 game against the Rams, where the Rams got the fake punt first down that kind of got the ball rolling toward their comeback victory. And Shanahan said after the game, well, we were expecting a fake punt. And to me, you can't be expecting the fake punt and then still get got on the fake punt. That goes to exactly what you're talking about. That's just detail. That's just, okay, we're expecting a fake punt, but then not executing properly to stop said fake punt. If you know it's coming, it should not work.
Right.
So,
and I think we've given Kyle Shanahan a lot of credit too for having a certain level of self-awareness as an offensive-oriented coach to know that he needs an elite defense to contend, right? Like, not all offensive coaches will be like, oh, we're going to pour a bunch of resources into our defensive line because we have to have a dominant defensive line. Like, I think Kyle Shanahan deserves credit for that.
I agree.
But at the same time, if you're going to be a coach that is so reliant on defense, I think being solid on special teams is one and the same, right? Like, you need to be able to flip field position, like 5 or 10 yards on any given drive can be the difference between getting in field goal range and punting, right, for another team. And in all these one score games that happen in the NFL, like, that could be the difference between winning and losing. So I just think there needs to be a renewed focus. And I think, firing Schneider was the right move given how the season went. And I would imagine that the 49ers are going to emphasize it, or at least they should. And if they don't, it would be a major problem. Because, like, look, even when the Packers in 2021 were the number 1 seed in the NFC, and the 49ers barely got into the playoffs, and they went and won in Lambeau Field, Packers were awful on special teams that year, right? Like, it seemed like Packers were one of the betting favorites to get to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC, obviously, as the number 1 seed or number 2 seed. I forget which one it was.
The Packers were the 2
because they didn't have the bye, right? So, but they were awful on special teams. Lo and behold, the Niners win the game on a blocked punt that turns into a touchdown, right? So I just there's plenty of evidence that special teams can be super important. And, like, we're not even talking about the kicking situation. Like, and if Jake Moody's gone, you obviously want to get a good kicker. I don't know how much I can analyze the Niners kicker situation without just saying they need to get better there, and probably do it without investing a 3rd-round pick in the position.
Sure.
But they need to be better on special teams. Like, there's no doubt, like, if they're going to try to get back to the Super Bowl, which is clearly their goal and their expectation and the bar at which they judge success, they have to get a lot better on special teams.
Yep.
In every facet.
Yep. And just on the Jake Moody point real quick, Schneider's not out there doing the kicks. He's not doing the holds. He's not doing the snaps. But he also, like, pounded the table for Jake Moody and was like, this is the guy. He was perfect in workouts.
Right.
We
even had Tim Kawakami saying, like, he would watch practice and watch Jake Moody's kicks during practice. And Tim Kawakami was like, this dude looks like a 1st-round pick as a kicker. Which is, like, a wild thing to say, but, like,
Tim's not the hyperbolic type.
Tim has plenty of NFL context in his resume to pull from, right? Like, he covered the Philadelphia Eagles in the 80s and Buddy Ryan. Like, he's, like, he knows football. He knows what he's looking at. And, like, there's no doubt that Jake Moody was talented, but for whatever reason, he just couldn't. I mean, it's like a golfer, right? I think there's a lot of similarities between kicking and golfing, in that, like, you could have somebody who can drive it 380 yards consistently, but, like, are they going to hit any fairways? And Jake Moody was just a dude who could kick the shit out of the ball, but when it came down to it, is not hitting a fairway on the 17th tee with a 1-stroke lead. Sure. Just wasn't going to happen.
Got a story of my life, am I right? Last thing for me on Jake Moody specifically, the reason I think the Niners need to move on from him is not because I think he's the worst kicker in the league, although he statistically was pretty close this year. I looked it up. 70.6% was his field goal percentage this year on 34 attempts. That bad of a percentage on that many kicks has only happened 4 times this century. And the last one was David Akers with the 49ers in 2012.
Yeah,
that was kind of funny. But no, with Moody, here's the issue with where he's at. And you talk about pressure, and it goes to your golf metaphor and the pressure and trying to, like, block out the noise and just go through and do what you did on the range or in practice 1,000 times. The problem with Jake Moody is, one, he was a top 100 pick, so there was already additional scrutiny on him. He missed his first 2 kicks as a pro in the preseason. Was it his first 2? He at least missed his first 1. He had problems in his first preseason making kicks. Then it was fine, but he missed his first game winner. And then he missed one the next week in Minnesota. And it was like, and then he had this year. Because the rest of his rookie season was good. He had a good Super Bowl, hit a couple of big kicks, but then he had this year where he misses 10 kicks and makes less than 71% of his tries. There's nothing he can do ever that's going to make the 49ers fan base as a collective confident in him. He could come back next year and go 40 for freaking 40 and hit a game-winning field goal in the divisional round and in the NFC title game. He could run out for a game-winning field goal in the Super Bowl and everybody would be like, oh, fuck. Like, that's where he is in the minds of just about everybody. And I think he knows that. And that additional pressure probably doesn't help.
I think one of the reasons why so many kickers drafted early don't pan out is because it's so rare that kickers do get taken early.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the bar that they have to clear is like almost impossible. Like, you basically, the expectation, like for Jake Moody to meet expectations after being drafted in the 3rd round and after the way Jim Harbaugh talked about him and, like you said, Brian Schneider pounding the table for him, the expectation is he has to be one of the 3 to 5 best kickers in football.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's a stupid pick because you could just get an undrafted free agent who could be league average, and you could draft a potential starter in the 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's sort of like the same conversation, and we'll talk about Brock Purdy, but that's sort of what I've alluded to with Brock Purdy, in that, like, man, if you make him the highest paid quarterback in the league, then the bar for him is impossibly high. Whereas if he's making $45 to $50 million,
mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, you have to be one of the best guys at your position. Like, the only way for Jake Moody to be successful coming out as a 3rd round pick was to be one of the best kickers in the league. And I think I don't know that it's necessarily an unfair position to put a guy in, because, like, man, if you're a kicker and you get drafted in the 3rd round, you get that much money straight out of college, like, that is a huge win for you just in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just in general. You're getting paid millions of dollars to kick footballs, which very few people have that opportunity straight out of college, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, it's like, all right, yeah, our expectation is to win the Super Bowl this year, and we're going to be in a lot of close games, and we're drafting you in the 3rd round because we believe in your ability to make those kicks. No pressure, kid. You know what I mean? Like,
no big deal.
You're going to a legacy franchise that's ready-made to win a Super Bowl,
mm-hmm.
and we're banking on you, and that's why we drafted you in the 3rd round. Like, that I think the reason why kickers fail in that situation is just because you're giving them a ton of pressure to start their careers, instead of, like, bring in 2 undrafted kickers.
Sure.
Right. And have them battle it out.
Yep.
I think that's probably a much more conducive way to finding a good kicker.
I agree.
Than, like, let's draft somebody on day 2, guarantee him a few $1 million, and say, yeah, more or less our Super Bowl hopes hinge on you.
No biggie.
No pressure. Yeah.
Although he did hit the kicks in the Super Bowl, so, and he was following up self-described Hall of Famer Robbie Gould.
I will say, as Moody did hit some big kicks in the Super Bowl, he also had that extra point that he kicked super low that got blocked.
Oof, that's tough.
In a game that went to overtime.
Boy, that's, you know what? All right, let's move on. Hey, a good bit with NFL draft season coming up. A good bit for us would be, because the plan is we're going to have some draft nicks on to talk about all this, is to ask them how they can contribute on special teams.
Is it even a bit?
Could this guy be a special teams player?
Really
like Jalen Walker from Texas. Not Texas, Georgia. He's a defensive end. Like, really love Jalen Walker. He does this not okay, but can he cover punts? How do you think?
How are those defensive tackles from Michigan at getting their big paws in the air on extra points?
Are you taking Kenneth Grant over Mason Graham because he's 2 inches taller?
Right.
Like, we got to talk
arm
about
length,
these things.
the hand size. Can he tip some? Can he tip some XPs?
Hey, shout out to Jordan Elliott, who's apparently really good at that.
Not good enough.
Good signing. Another thing from Monday, locker cleanout day, Christian McCaffrey said that if the 49ers are playing this weekend, he would play, which is where his knee injury is at that he suffered in week 13. So no setbacks, no issues apparently there.
I got some news for Christian. They're not playing this weekend.
Wait, what? What are we podcasting for? No. And then he also said, according to, this is all via Nick Wagner at ESPN, he also said that his Achilles stuff is like 100% calmed down. He's going to be good to go for OTAs, which is a pretty significant deal.
Yeah. And like, look, there has been a very substantial, significant one-to-one correlation between Niners skill guys in particular having great off seasons and having great seasons.
Yep.
Brandon Ayuk last year, best player on the field in the offseason, or at least one of them, him and Christian McCaffrey, 1A, 1B. Like, these guys look awesome. Lo and behold, during the regular season, these guys are awesome. They're all pros. Christian McCaffrey's the offensive player of the year. Brandon Ayuk in a contract year, more or less, like, is an all-pro, deserves a bag at the top of the receiver market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I'm not saying that necessarily that Brandon Ayuk got hurt because he missed training camp, but what I will say is I think there's a direct correlation between him not practicing in training camp and him not being as productive before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and again, Christian McCaffrey's injury, I don't know, you know, why he got hurt, if it was overtraining or if it's just too much wear and tear, et cetera, whatever.
Sure.
But the entire prerogative for the 49ers this offseason has to be getting all of their guys on the practice field and having amazing off seasons.
Yep.
That's just it.
Including Brock Purdy, who is up for a contract extension. He danced around it yesterday. He got asked directly during his media scrum at locker cleanout day. If you don't have a contract, will you show up to OTAs and minicamp? And he didn't say yes, but he also didn't say no. He didn't not commit totally. And he also said that he wants to get a contract done early so he can be back for phase one, which to me says,
go ahead. Sorry.
Which to me says he's not going to show up if he doesn't have a contract.
Yeah. He didn't say he would hold out, but I think
he also didn't say he wouldn't not hold out.
He didn't say he wouldn't hold out is I guess what,
because
he had an opportunity to say he wouldn't hold out.
Right.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like the one thing I will say, like, we can look at the 49ers recent history with contracts and all their guys. It's taken a long time, even going into training camp. Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey last year to a certain extent, Deebo Samuel previously, George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, obviously. Like, those have all been contentious at times. They've taken longer than they should have. The one parallel, I think, if you want to be glass half full about the Purdy situation getting done early, is going back to 2018 and Jimmy Garoppolo. Because they did get that deal done in February.
Yep.
The difference being Jimmy Garoppolo was headed towards free agency and he was unsigned. The Niners had to sign him or tag him in order for him to be their starting quarterback. Brock Purdy is still technically under contract on the last year of his rookie deal going into 2025. So it's not a one-to-one comparison, but the comparison would be quarterback, obviously the most important position for any franchise. And you get that done, and then you can have a clear operating budget from a salary cap perspective going into free agency. And like, again, the entire ethos for the 49ers off season has to be get everything done as soon as possible and have the best off-season program and practices you can have.
Yeah. I would if I'm the 49ers, I'm paying a couple extra million or taking my like ceiling offer and pushing it up a couple extra million and basically viewing it as a as a tax to just get this deal done. And just establishing, if this is your franchise quarterback, then make him your franchise quarterback. Establish that now. And you can't have, because you don't want to go into OTAs. You don't even want to go into phase 1. That's mid-April. You don't want to go in there going, oh man, they're going to sign Brock Purdy? Maybe they don't want him. Maybe they're getting cold feet on signing. You just don't want those questions. You don't want to go into mini camp and you have to have players answering questions about Brock Purdy's future, Like this is a scenario where we've talked so much about what do you pay him, what do you not. You're going to pay him. And I understand there's going to be some level of negotiation, but I'd be at the table starting yesterday. I'd be at the negotiating table every single day until that deal's done.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to do. Bend over backwards to make it happen. If he's asking for something outrageous, if he's like 65 a year and 250 guaranteed, like, okay, then that's a little different. But if whatever he's asking for is reasonable, yeah, just signed, sealed, delivered. There's so much more value in getting it done before free agency. Just again, because you know how that deal then is going to be structured. You're not guessing. You're not nitpicking over a couple million here and there because you know what? You signed this guy in free agency and kind of banking on Purdy's deal looking this way or whatever it is. Get it hammered out. Get that done. Establish that this is the guy. You didn't pussyfoot around with the contract, and you paid your franchise quarterback.
Yeah,
it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what's going to end up happening, like every single NFL contract, it feels like the reported numbers are going to be bigger than what the deal's actually worth because he has a year left on his rookie contract. They can spread the money out, the guaranteed money out even more and make the cap hits smaller than, the average annual value, right? Like if the average annual value is $55 million, well, there's a pretty good chance that his cap hit in his first season is going to be $10 million, right? Or something like that. Like that's just, there are so many different mechanics to contracts and the 49ers have done a really good job at being flexible and having all of these different mechanics in place to where they can have small cap numbers early on in these contracts, build around your quarterback. But yeah, I'm with you. Get it done as early as possible. Know what your budget's going to be for a potential free agent defensive tackle, or if you can bring back Trey Greenlaw, or it seems like Charvarius Ward, that ship has sailed. And maybe all these guys are going to be gone anyway, but have a very clear understanding of where you stand in free agency and what you need and what you can afford because of Brock Purdy. Because if you don't have Brock Purdy signed and then you're negotiating hard with some of these free agents at key spots, whether it's a defensive tackle or corner or, a potential right tackle. And you're like, well, we'd love to give you that extra $1.5 million signing bonus, but we don't know what we're paying our quarterback yet. That might be the difference between getting a good starting player and a good veteran player who could help you potentially win a Super Bowl and not getting that guy. So get it done soon. Get it done as soon as possible. Get it done before the scouting combine. Go to the scouting combine and high step to your media availability and brag about how you got Brock Purdy done.
Yep.
And so now you can operate as normal, because the last thing Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch want to do is go to the combine and have to answer all the questions. So you don't have Brock Purdy signed yet. Are you going to look at quarterbacks? And of course they're going to say we're looking at every positions, and then it's going to get aggregated all over the internet, and everyone's going to speculate, are the Niners interested in Aaron Rodgers, right? I'm already seeing stuff like Aaron Rodgers is, what the Niners are among the betting favorites to get Aaron Rodgers because they haven't signed Brock Purdy yet. And I'm not saying there's any validity to that, because I don't think there is, but these are going to be questions that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to be peppered with. And it's such a waste of time and energy and just mental bandwidth to have to deal with all that shit when you could just get him signed and then proceed as normal, operate like a normal fucking franchise for once when it comes to the quarterback position. So they have an opportunity to do that. And if Brock Purdy's camp, again, Brock Purdy has that's the other thing. We don't know. Like, we have an idea of what Brock Purdy wants, right? Like, we think we know. Brock Purdy says it's not about me, it's about the team. Like, I just want to help these guys win a Super Bowl, et cetera, which would make you think, okay, maybe Brock Purdy's not going to want $65 million a year and to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. But maybe Brock Purdy's camp says, nah, we're getting more than Dak Prescott, because every single time we go up against Dak Prescott head to head, we beat his ass, and Brock Purdy has way more playoff wins than Dak Prescott does, right? Like, maybe that's where Brock Purdy's camp is coming from. And if that happens, then I could see it getting ugly, because I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy top of the market. Like, I want to get it. If I'm the Niners, I want to get it done as soon as possible for all these reasons that we're talking about. But I'm also not going to overspend, like, just to do it, because, like, hey, maybe Sam Darnold's available. I don't know. But, like, I know I'm kind of talking about out both sides of my mouth here. Like, they need to get it done, but they need to get it done not for $65 million a year or however much.
Sure.
You know, like,
yeah, right. There's still, this is not, it's not go to the negotiating table with 65 and give it to them. No, you're going to go to the table with, I don't know, I'm just going to start saying quarterback names. The Daniel Jones contract is like 40 a year, and he's obviously not going to take that. And they're going to put down the Dak Prescott contract, and I just go, okay, well, not that. And land at Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, whatever it is, land at that deal, call it good, and get it done.
I think they should be like Tua plus inflation.
Yeah, sure. Or that, or sure. Whatever. I'm with you. Don't go in and overspend just to overspend. Yeah. But if the Niners are like internally like, man, we'd feel really good at like 48 and we're willing to go up to 55. Yeah, start at 48 then. And know what your wiggle room is. But I just this cannot be, whatever the number is matters less to me than not having this bleed into July.
Yeah, I think the number doesn't matter as long as it's not like the largest quarterback contract in the league.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
Like, Tua makes $52 million a year. It was a, I guess, 4-year. Yeah, sorry, 4-year, 212. Like, all right, 4-year, 216. Call it a day. You know, like, just get there and have mechanisms to where you can spread it out. You can, you know, push money down the road so you can shrink his cap number every year, like some of these team-friendly quarterback contracts do. Like, do that, make everybody happy. I do think Brock wants to be in a situation where he's looked at favorably because he's, you know, quote unquote, on a team-friendly contract. And that kind of goes back to like the Jake Moody stuff. Like, if you make Brock Purdy the highest paid quarterback in football, he damn well better win an MVP, or you bet everybody's coming down on him and the Niners.
Yep.
But if Brock Purdy's making $50 million a year and he's, you know, top 10 money and the Niners are winning, he's can skate. He doesn't need to be an MVP.
Coasting. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Jimmy Garoppolo's deal was reported February 8th, 2018. So I'm setting the over-under date at February 8th. Is it before or after that?
When's the Super Bowl?
February 7th, 9th.
I will go. Super Bowl week is a good time. To
just steal some thunder. Steal a little thunder.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to set it the Monday after Super Bowl. When's? Oh no, I'm sorry. Wait, January. I do not like the way this goes. There we go. Okay, February 10th. The Monday after Super Bowl, over or under?
You mean before or after?
Yeah.
I'm going to say after, only because I think most of those contracts don't get done that early, but I would say before the combine has to be the goal.
Okay. I dig that. Cool.
Because, like, I do imagine that, like, there's, like, John Lynch and the personnel and department and Kyle Shanahan are going to go on vacation for a minute and then, like, get back to work, you know, late January or something.
All right. Very good.
We're gonna get some social media content of Kyle Shanahan being in Cabo playing golf with George Kittle.
1,000%.
Probably not even drinking.
RBVs in hand.
Probably not even drinking margaritas. Probably just straight tequila and lime. just skipping the filler. Just like we were 6 and 11. We don't need all these carbs and sugar and calories.
All right, I got nothing else. At least for now. Appreciate everybody for checking us out. YouTube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles Podcast. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, hit the notification bell to notify you when we go live. Should do a few times during the off season. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends. We'd appreciate that kind of it. That's all for us.
Yep.